Welcome to another edition of FH&P Lawyers Law Talk. I'm Clay Williams. I'm a partner at FH&P Lawyers. I'm here with two really interesting guests for our discussion today. First of all, Brea Lake. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
So Brea is the CEO of Accelerate Okanagan. So we got a big shot here today. So we're going to chat with you. And with me is also Russell Tees. And Russell is an associate and works very closely with Accelerate Okanagan. So hopefully we can get a good discussion going. Brea, I understand you've actually been in our offices before.
I have, yeah. It was actually a flashback coming here today. This is where I got my start in tech, actually. I worked with Disney's Club Penguin here, which used to be located in this building. So this was actually the same floor that I worked on, too.
Oh, yes, was it?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know, when I have new clients come over, I give them the tour. And one of the things I think that was Disney did was do the internal staircase here, which is really nice for us. So we can access the different floors without having to go out. And
I was curious if it was going to still be intact, so it's nice to still see it here.
No, that's one of the things I really like about the place. So anyway, welcome back. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Accelerate Okanagan. I think for most of the people that are listening or watching today, you know, people know about Accelerate Okanagan. They know somebody who's been through. It's a big deal. It's always you're always in the news. But tell us what Accelerate Okanagan is all about, what it does.
For sure. So Accelerate Okanagan really is here to help technology companies start and grow in our region and help to foster the technology industry. I would really say over the past 5 years, especially just since the pandemic, we've really broadened the types of companies we support now to not just be tech companies at their core, because most businesses nowadays have to have technology embedded directly in their business. Mm-hmm. So really it's about fostering the growth and connections in the tech community here.
So you've been the CEO of Accelerate Okanagan, I understand from my notes here, since 2019. So you've actually been the CEO through a lot of this growth that you're talking about.
Yes, for sure. I actually joined our team in 2014, and my role was initially as a community manager, helped to convince people that the tech industry was here in the Okanagan and here to stay. Yeah. And I got to kind of grow alongside the community and the tech industry through an operations role, and then formally took on the CEO role in 2019. Now,
so you've got physical premises.
Yes, we do.
And where are those?
So
I know this. I'm just quizzing you.
You've been there, I'm hoping, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. We're located downtown at the Innovation Center, and we were very intentional about joining and being in that building and helping to get that building on the map here in our region. A lot of tech companies, even when I mentioned Disney, were behind closed doors. And so it was hard for the public to recognize that tech was here and growing. And so this building was built in 2017, and the focus was to put tech innovation on the map and help people invite them in to see what is actually being built here in the community. So it's full of tech and innovation companies.
And lots of social events, it seems, you're doing as well, right?
Yeah, it's a hub for that for sure. And I know you've attended quite a few of our events. Yeah.
So many. Yeah. It really is, though, a welcoming space. You walk in there, you're not assaulted by somebody at the front desk asking, "Where are you going?" blah, 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 type thing. It feels super welcoming, like a community aspect to the Accelerate space. Yeah. It really brings people together. It's built for networking, it feels like almost.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up the staircase here, because that was very intentional in the Innovation Center. There's a staircase right in the center of the building that draws you into it. And the idea was that you would bump into people on the staircase, stop and have informal chats, and hopefully get the help that you need with the problems or challenges you're facing at that time.
Oh, really? Oh, that's very interesting. That's great. Now I'm going to get you to run through some of the things. Again, I got handed this really long list of all the things you do. I mean, a busy person, it looks like. So you do all these different things. Why don't you run through? I mean, my list starts with 360 and all the different programs that you do. Why don't you tell us some of those things?
Sure. Yeah, you guys have been a great supporter of our programs that we have here. And at our core, we're really wanting to help businesses with business mentorship. You know, being an entrepreneur is a lonely journey. It's hard to know like what you should be doing and where to go next. And so we try to pair businesses up with the right education and mentorship they need to thrive and really grow their ideas. So a couple of the programs that FH&P has supported are early stage programs around market ready and venture validation. So this is taking entrepreneurs who maybe have an idea through the process of validating, is it a good idea? Is there a market for this idea? And once they get to that stage of like, yes, this is a good idea, and we've gotten some customer feedback, they go into a program called Market Ready, where they learn to launch it and really get it out the door and refine their pitch. And get their first few customers. And I know you've been a part of some of the demo days at the end of that too, and getting to see the company's pitch.
Absolutely. And both of the programs are incredible. Really, venture validation is inspiring because it's people who have these big, beautiful ideas. And so often with Accelerate programs or other incubator type programs, they're stifled at the door. They're told, your idea will never work, it'll never fit in this marketplace. Whereas with Accelerate Okanagan, the idea is, yes, your idea might not be ready now, but we're going to meld this into something that's going to work, that still fits within the passion or that solution that you're trying to create within the community or the world, whatever that idea is. So being part of the interview process, it's really unique. You're not, the door isn't slammed in your face. Rather, you're given tips on, come back next year and maybe work on this aspect of it. Or you're fit for this program because you're teachable, and we can move you further ahead with your idea. Maybe not the same idea, but it might be a grown version of that idea, I think.
I don't know if you had the opportunity to meet the Zenimate
Yeah,
team.
they're clients.
Yeah. Oh, are they? Okay,
Yes.
that's so great. Zenimate is one of the startups I love to highlight because they came into our program as two separate founders with different business ideas. Yeah. They went through the program and realized neither were great. Yeah. And so they ended up meeting and starting a business together and went through the next phase of our programs, validated out that idea, and have since gone on to do multiple pitch competitions and been a part of our other programs that we have here.
Yeah.
But it's really, again, that's kind of the magic, is their first ideas didn't succeed, but they still found benefit to be able to work together and find the right idea to work on and move forward.
That's a great story. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. And so then what happens after that? So you're validated out, and this list of programs seems to go on and on and on.
Yeah.
So what happens after that?
So I would say the two other key flagship events programs post that we focus on is one around the Okanagan Angel Summit here. And so that's companies that are looking to raise money. Mm-hmm. We found a big gap in our market that we have a lot of wealthy individuals that call the Okanagan home, but weren't necessarily deploying capital or investing into local businesses here. And so over the past 7 years, we've trained over 130 angel investors in our community to deploy capital into startups. Mm-hmm. And the program side of that for potential companies is they get to come in and learn how to pitch and meet real investors over 8 weeks. And so at the end of it, one company wins a check that gets invested into it. So that one helps with the big capital challenge that most companies face, especially at the earliest stage. And then the other program that I'd love to mention is 360. And so that program is for later stage companies that truly have traction in market, have revenue, and are really looking for wraparound supports to help them get over some of the common pitfalls that businesses face and get to true scale.
Okay, yeah, actually, just reading the notes here. So they're actively scaling and are actually getting revenue and are already in the industry, I guess, at that stage, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And I think typically what we see at that stage is they have traction, they've built their team probably up till about 10 to 20 individuals, but now if they really truly want to rapidly scale and be a going concern, they just need some support of getting past that startup mindset into more of that scaling or growth company mindset.
Oh, that's great. And so is there any other programs that you want to emphasize?
One that we're actually just launching, it launched softly last week, so you guys are getting the first peek at it.
All right.
But we're running a program called Market Diversification that is actually helping businesses access grant funding that are looking to diversify markets. We all know about challenges that are happening that businesses, if they were too dependent on one market, specifically in the States right now, how can they look to different opportunities? And so we're launching a grant program that companies can access up to $10,000 to help expand into new either foreign markets or provincial markets.
Oh, that's
and I should say that program too, we're working with a local partner here called ETSI, our local economic trust. And so it's not exclusive just to tech companies, but all businesses that might be exporting. Yeah.
I guess I should ask, so is it just tech companies, or can like a company that is introducing tech into their businesses, can they benefit from Accelerate Okanagan?
Yeah, I would say most of the core programs we talked about are true tech companies and have their own unique IP or product. But we do often offer different grants like this or workshops that any business, I would say any Main Street business, can benefit from. And we often are that welcoming place that we say, if you're an entrepreneur looking for help, come through our doors and we'll help to refer you to the right resources regardless of what is at the core of your business.
So what about like my business, for instance? So, we are really trying to be at the forefront of AI and incorporating, processes through the introduction of computer programs and that. And I think did you come to Rocky's, one of Rocky's
Yes,
talks?
I did.
So,
yes, we were on that together last week. Is that right? Maybe?
Well, the
recently.
one I went to was a couple of weeks ago.
Okay,
but,
yes.
So
Yeah.
anyway, we had him. He came in and did a speaker's, and he was on the podcast as well. But that's all about AI. And, is there anything for businesses like ours through Accelerate Okanagan?
I would say definitely on our workshop and our events that we run to the broader community, it really is about how can we leverage some of the expertise and best practices we see in our industry and unlock that for a lot of the companies. And so we do bring in examples like Rocky. We have a session tomorrow called Offsite where we're bringing in a coaching firm called Roy's Group to come and train on the principles of leadership. And so again, that's open to the broader public and isn't sector agnostic. So you could really be a part of any sector.
Sector agnostic.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So we've heard a lot from you. How about Russ? So now you are involved with Accelerate Okanagan on the mentor side. Have I got that right?
Yeah, somewhat in the mentor side. I mean, I'm there for the interviews, like I said previously, on both the market ready and venture validation programs. My other involvement is primarily a single day of mentorship, which is kind of like, it reminds me of the Reddit Ask Me Anything days, where you post something to a director, an author, or somebody where you just pepper this person with questions from the audience pretty much. And that's exactly my involvement on certain days with the program is Ask a Lawyer Anything Day. And people either come with pre-submitted questions that I write out long answers to, or they hit me with questions on the spot. And really the idea there is to provide them with full and frank advice on what challenges their specific company is going to face, getting that information from being a part of the interview process so I have an understanding of what exactly what kind of red tape that company may face, but also their specifically tailored questions as to, what are the legal barriers and what kind of things do I need to be concerned of with X, Y, and Z business. And that's primarily my role there outside of coming and hearing all the pitches and encouraging everybody along their way and meeting them for coffee every so often, like the Zenimate guys, for periodic updates on, how their business is going and anything that we can help with.
That would be an interesting one, I'll bet, because you'd have some people that have really no prior interaction with lawyers up to people that have, one of your programs talking about scaling up to $10 million in revenue and things, and quite sophisticated, I'd imagine, eh? So you got to be on your toes, man.
Yeah.
I think it's actually such an amazing asset for us to be able to offer that to the community and the companies we work with, because to be honest, a lot of them are intimidated by lawyers or getting legal advice. They don't necessarily always want to admit what they don't know.
Exactly.
And so being able to have a low barrier spot where they can come in and feel like it's a safe space to ask those questions helps to make stronger businesses here for our region, because they're getting the right advice at the right time.
Exactly.
Well, I always say you've got to build a team. I mean, you've got to have legal, accounting, tax. I mean,
that's one of the things that that seems to always get missed with, except they're so focused on the beautiful big idea. They're like, oh, I have to account for accounting and legal costs, where you should have a little pot set aside for both of those things. Just the basics of business, because everybody's coming from a different place with their idea, with a lot of business acumen or none at all. Right, but right at the forefront is an idea. And so it's a matter of nurturing them at whatever angle they need. Yeah.
Question for both of you guys. Do you see a lot of questions around IP?
Yes.
Coming from the startups? Yeah. It's interesting. I would say over the past 10 years and working in tech here, I would say early days, there wasn't a lot of push around IP protection. It was just go build a business, ship it. That's okay. Just launch. Yeah. Whereas I would say over the last few years, Canada has had a huge push, especially from the federal government, of we want to protect our IP now as a country, because a lot of the ideas have been maybe taken by other countries. And so there's been a bigger push for that. And I'd see it all the way down to the earliest stage. And I was wondering if you've seen some of that.
Absolutely. You know, and the biggest issue with IP is demystifying what people think IP is. They hear IP and they're instantly trademarks, patents. But you don't realize trademarks and patents are for much later stage companies that have a ton of capital and are at that point where brand protection and protecting obviously the product itself, the invention itself with a patent is necessary. But what people don't realize, when they're in a venture validation or market ready program, when they're very early stage, having a sit down discussion with somebody could result in your IP being leaked if you don't have, if people are agreeing to it, an NDA in place, which is very, you know, sometimes that is a barrier to entry for conversation for some people. But in other instances, the most important thing you can have is you could assign your IP to your company. Right? If you have, you know, just to give a brief breakdown, if you have your IP split amongst a number of different brain children being your founders, and if all three of us are founders and we each have a piece of the IP, the idea, and we break up, what happens to the main asset of the company? It's destroyed. So it's important for people to realize that IP, the beginning stage is also for investors, is to assign your IP to the company. So when an investor looks in, they say, oh, the company owns a major asset, not each of its founders. And so it's really small things like that that are to get in the mind of founders thinking about IP protection and conversation, but also in the structure of a company. And then thinking about, okay, what stage will it be necessary to look at a trademark? Will it be necessary to have a patent? And then that's when all the niche patent and trademark lawyers.
You know, just listening to you talk, I was thinking also perhaps separating the IP from the operator who might be liable in certain situations.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah,
so,
totally.
But yeah, no, classic stuff. So
yeah, it's classic for you guys, not classic for the tech entrepreneurs. I can tell you that. Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and I guess you get all types, you know, you get people who are just moved out from their parents' basement all the way to very sophisticated people to, you know, who have run a company and have an idea, right?
Yeah, we really do. I'm always fascinated too. And I feel like, I'm sure you guys see it as well, but a lot of the entrepreneurs that we have can be those repeat or serial entrepreneurs. So they have had exits. They've gone through the scale, and then they'll still come back to our programs because they find it so foundational at the earliest stages. So we do get those, repeat offenders, I would say, and then also the ones who are budding with ideas.
Well, I love what you said though about the stairways and meeting people and just mixing. I mean, that's and how these two people came together through one of your programs. What type of social events are you putting on?
Yeah, we really try to be that convener and connector here through so many different events, and so we do a lot of different kind of meetups all the way. One of our more flagship ones that is well known in the community and it's been there for many years is called Startup Drinks. Happens on a networking social at the end of the day where you can come in. We rotate to different tech offices. So it's a way to come in and peek at their offices of what's going on. We do a lot of workshops, content-based ones as well. And then we have a few flagship events during the year, one being the Okanagan Angel Summit, where we invite close to 300 people in to see the final pitches of companies and make some connections with different investors.
So how do you access Accelerate Okanagan? If I guess it might be different if I'm running my own plumbing company and have an idea, or if I'm just a young person with an idea, or I guess an old person with an idea without money. I don't know. How would you first
find
access?
in or plug in?
Yeah.
I would say definitely. Obviously, online's the easiest through our website. On our website, you'll find we have a robust events page where it's not only just our events, but all kind of tech entrepreneurial events in the Okanagan get populated there. So that's a great way if you're looking for a doorway in. But also, we always invite people to just come down to our office space. So that is located at 460 Doyle, attached to the library downtown. We're on the second floor there, and we have garage doors that are open and people can just roam in. It looks like a little bit of a coffee shop. We grab people a cup of coffee, and our team's always happy to sit down and have a chat and figure out how we can best plug that individual in.
Is there somebody that you would recommend they call beforehand, or like do you have so they just wander
show
in
up.
and show up, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Megan at the front desk.
Your
She'll
door's
come say hi
always
to you.
open. Okay,
Yes.
sounds great. Okay, so now Russell has given me some hard questions for you guys. So,
Okay.
so here we go. We'll see how you do. It's kind of like an exam.
Yes,
So,
okay.
what are some common pitfalls of tech startups?
Well, it was interesting. I think we already kind of unearthed a little bit under the IP being a challenge. But I think often what we hear is the big challenges from companies, regardless of their size and stage, is access to capital and access to talent. And I think those really depend on, are they just starting out or later stage? But on the capital front, you know, money is harder and harder to get given the economic climate right now. And so how can we help them understand what are the different funding pathways, what it looks like to be angel investor backed, venture backed, or if you're going to bootstrap it is the term that we use in the tech community. And so really focus on gaining customer revenue. So we'll help people plan out that path and what that looks like. But that's one of the biggest barriers I would say that companies face is figuring out where to get money or capital from and what makes sense for their business path they're on. And then we do often hear talent as an issue. And I think that takes a few different formats. One is access to the right talent. Lots of companies growing here in the Okanagan are able to pull in on like the post-secondary grads. But really once you start to scale up, it's hard to find mid to senior level talent with deep expertise often in the tech space here locally. And so you're often looking then to attract someone to move to the region or look for a remote team. And so navigating that can be tricky for companies. And then
Do you find, like, if do people kind of do you keep running into the same people? You know, like if somebody is really good at a certain thing that's necessary for a tech, this one doesn't work. Do they all of a sudden become available to somebody else? Is that how it works? Or
yes and no. I would say that definitely does happen. Even when we talked about Disney in the early days, Disney at its peak was about 350 individuals working here, and it was a great magnet. People wanted to come and work for that brand and bring their expertise to our region. When they chose to leave or when Disney downsized, that spun a great pool of talent into the ecosystem here that other companies could hire. And so what we actually see in our region is quite a cluster of animation and gaming companies. And it truly stems from the original Disney, I would say, that everyone's connected to.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we do see that happen time and time again, where someone's attracted to one company, but then will join another one. And we often say that's the secret sauce of the region is you want to make sure you have multiple competitors in a sub-industry. Because if there's only one animation studio, it's hard for someone to pack up their life and move in case that doesn't work out. Where do they go? And so there actually is a secret sauce in having some competition to make the whole industry thrive.
okay, that's interesting. Well, you know that finding talent is hard for everybody.
It really is.
I'm sure that's just not something in the tech industry, but luckily we found Russell.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sorry, Clay, before you move on, just on the common pitfalls from a legal perspective, two major things, which we already touched on, which is people don't realize you need to set aside some money for your accounting, which is very important for business planning. Accounting is essential, but also legal, just a little bit for legal. And the most common pitfall I see is self-incorporations. So the tech landscape and tech companies, people don't realize that these companies are very specifically tailored for scale and sale purposes. It's not the same as an owner-managed business or your local coffee shop where people aren't going to be staring into the share structure and the articles of the company on a regular basis. Whereas with tech companies, people are taking a magnifying glass to these things. And so often I get self-incorp say, hey, can you review this? I have a potential investor and we have to redo the whole incorp so it can fit just the tech landscape, let alone what your investor is going to ask for. So my number one suggestion is just get a lawyer to do your incorporation that understands tech law, because your corporate structure is going to be completely different than any other type of company. And that is to set you up for investment so you don't have to do the expensive share alterations, company alterations, which can be difficult and sometimes not possible when you have a bunch of people on your cap table or your shareholders who may not agree to that.
We've seen that time and time again.
Yeah.
Well, we do in I don't do really startups, but I see that all the time when, when people go online, you can incorporate for $300.
Exactly,
But then, we're going to see you eventually. So at some point you'll have to come in when you get a bank loan or you want to bring in an investor in or a partner in or something like that.
And with tech companies, investors are constantly asking for, your deal room, which involves all of your company information, specifically the share structure, specifically the articles. They want to make sure the protections are there for them for that investment.
Yeah, I've heard it time and time again. Yeah, they have to try to unwind that afterwards because they're like, oh, we weren't set up that way. Yeah.
So the question would be then, so would you recommend that people they've got an idea, go to these workshops, meet people first before you start doing business, I guess, because then there's tax consequences too, right? Let's plan it out before you start, or just do it.
I really think what we have found is come and get the support so we can help to guide you or give you at least the options so you know what to do at what stage. And I think you coming in and helping even in the market ready and venture validation program, a lot of that is embedded into those programs. So people are constantly reminded this is who you speak to and when you speak to them.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally.
Did you just answer the next question you gave me? Because the next question says, what gaps do law firms need to bridge with startups? I think you've just answered that, or is there anything else?
Well, I think, Brea, you kind of touched on it earlier with, there's this proclivity for people to even engage a company or a law firm because they're a little bit scared of asking them, or that if they pick up the phone and call a lawyer, they're instantly getting billed for it. Or I'm just curious about if there's any other things that law firms need to do a better job of creating a connective tissue between, an idea maker and creating their company and nurturing that business along the way without creating fear. Because one of the biggest issues for lawyers in every respect, litigation is being a solicitor, is we need the full truth from you. We need absolutely everything. You can't hide something from us, or else we can't help your company, or there might be a giant gaping liability hole that you're excluding from our information that we could have protected you from.
But it sounds like you can go down, have coffee, and go to one of the workshops where you ask a lawyer anything. So, I mean, there are answers to all this, I guess.
I think that is really starting, intentionally, we're trying to remove some of those barriers for that reason. I think otherwise, I know we're going to probably chat on this, but a lot of companies just, because they come from the tech space, are, you know what, I'll just ask AI how to do this rather than a real lawyer. Yeah. And I feel like we know what the issues are with that, and that it's not giving them the accurate picture or maybe the relevant information because they're only feeding in a certain amount of data that's not giving the full context. And so I think what you guys are doing by intentionally showing up and helping to lower those barriers is helping us build stronger companies for the whole Okanagan, because otherwise they do just build in a silo and then they have issues down the road.
Totally. Yeah. And at FH&P we have speaker series events, and I think it'd be helpful, probably, it sounds like, to have a speaker series that involves tech-related legal questions or discussing AI. All the necessary things, and to go
specific to tech, I guess.
Totally,
we just did have Rocky talk about
specific
AI
to tech companies. Yeah. So, for example, very brief example anecdote. We were both just at Web Summit Vancouver, which was an excellent time to meet people. And I was chatting with a lawyer who is a founder of a legal tech company. And while we're talking, a software developer individual comes up and says, blah, blah, blah. And we're talking about how to answer legal questions. He was kind of listening, and then all of a sudden he decided to jump in, which is totally cool, that's what I love about Web Summit. Yeah. And then he jumps in and said, oh, well, just ask AI to do it. It's ready. Yeah. And and he said his piece and then walked away. And me and the lawyer kept talking. We're like, this is how you know AI is not ready, is because somebody thinks because it gives you an answer that sounds right isn't actually correct. It'll be pulling from jurisdictions from all over the world, and it'll be a jumble of legal advice, but it's definitely not correct. Some of it's correct, but it may lead you down the wrong path anyway. So I think the reliance on AI at the moment is a little bit too strong for legal advice. It's just not quite there yet, where it still hallucinates a little bit too much to give you a correct answer. Not only that, people don't know how to prompt it correctly and basically say, I want an answer for British Columbia, or even narrower for Kelowna municipality, British Columbia, Canada. if you don't put something like that in there, it's going to give you everything.
And I feel like even Rocky, he was, number one tip there is ask, like, how certain are you in this? Ask more clarifying questions. It's all about that prompting, but it's still a lot of trust that individuals are putting into an AI solution that.
Well, and it seems really good at specifics, but without really understanding the whole framework or, you know, that it's looking at. So, you know, that's something you can ask it, give me a specific clause for this, and you'll get a clause, but does that fit into what you're trying to do? I think that's really dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Just a snapshot of, not the full picture.
But having said that, I mean, AI is something that we need to embrace. AI is something that law firms will embrace, and you know, we've got closed AI systems here, and it's coming. But I still think there's you've got to have somebody. You better know somebody to look at the whole context, the whole factual matrix, I think is what we'd call it. So, okay, so. Next thing on Russell's examination questions are what makes a great founder in your opinion?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because you mentioned Web Summit, and I feel like that was a big debate even at Web Summit is like, what do you look for in founders? How do you pick winners? Who's going to be the right entrepreneur to support? And, you know, there isn't one great answer, I would say. I think it often comes down to like the passion and the problem they're trying to solve. I think the most successful entrepreneurs, I think the problem that they're trying to solve with their business is near and dear to their heart and is relevant to them, not just some obscure issue they stumbled upon. That's when I really find the most success is that they have a problem that really resonates with them, that they're willing to pour their heart and soul into for many, many years to see it be successful and find a solution for it, rather than just an idea they had on the side of their desks.
You know, that's an interesting answer, and it makes me wonder about life experiences. And should a founder, in your experience, a successful founder, have some life experiences and this idea comes out of those, or, you know, gets out of high school like Bill Gates, or, you know, I guess he was actually went to university for a while, didn't he? And, but these really young people have ideas, you know? I
think it can come from either place. You know, one of the first companies I ever met when I joined Accelerate Okanagan, his name is Peter O'Brien. He was the founder of a company called VO2 Master, and they're still around. And what he was trying to solve was like a wearable VO2 machine so that elite athletes could see what their VO2 metrics were.
That's cool.
So he came in with a piece of plywood. He was a first-year engineering student at UBCO, a piece of plywood with everything circuit board, everything attached to it. And he was getting his friend to drive beside him while he was on a bicycle wearing the mask hooked up to this board.
No way.
And now fast forward 10 years later, they're still in operation. Obviously, they have a product that now is wearable and can be used by performance athletes. But again, you would never think a founder at that stage would have the experience or know-how or the grit to stick with it, to be that 10-year overnight success. Right. But I think he was passionate about figuring it out. He had been a performance athlete himself, and so
life experiences.
Understood that. Yep. But again, to what scale? So it's just interesting. Yeah. Right. But yeah, resonated with him.
It's actually, it's such a great point about the personal experiences, the internal passion for something to create it into a solvable solution for the world or community that you're in. Because even back to Web Summit or just the pitch events that I've been to, a narrative is so much more sellable, it seems like, than just a standardized, you know, bullet point pitch. This is what I'm trying to solve. This is a market. But now people are integrating their personal narratives into their business as a story, which is actually something one of our last speaker series was about. Was transforming your brand into a narrative.
Yeah.
And totally. I think founders it seems like you were saying earlier, they're desperate to find somebody else that shares that passion, especially a bit more mid-tier to higher tier level developers and whatnot.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. I think that's one of the other big questions that we often get too, is like, how do you find that co-founder or someone with that technical expertise? I think with where AI is going and the rapid adoption of technology, it doesn't seem as dependent that it used to be of having to find a strong technical co-founder, because you can usually outsource or rely on other firms to help with it. But I think it's still, how do you find that right match
Right
when you're
match,
building a business?
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm pretty sure you were expecting this one. This is a softball.
Okay.
So every time that I'm, I look at a new place, a city or whatever to go to, it's like they talk about their thriving tech sector. Why the Okanagan?
Why us? Why here?
Why us?
I think one thing I haven't brought up today is really the size and scope of the tech sector here. And so the Okanagan tech sector is a $5 billion economic impact annually. That's about 800 tech companies that are operating here and about 32,000 people that are working in tech. I grew up here in the Okanagan, actually in Summerland. And I remember growing up here, you really couldn't stay in the Okanagan. It was a destination for retirement. And I would say that narrative has definitely shifted, that you can come here and have a career now. You don't have to go to a larger center like a Vancouver, Calgary, or Toronto. And I really think the asset for tech companies of why build your company here is you can be that big fish in a smaller pond. And what I mean by that is you get more wraparound supports if you want to grow a business here. Whereas if you're building it in a larger center, you can quickly get drowned out by the 25 other startups that are starting at the same time. And so I think a lot of the companies here have a better chance of success for choosing to start here in the Okanagan.
So we've got the right scale, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's great. And we've got great summers.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Who doesn't? All the lifestyle. Great winters too,
That's
I feel like. Yeah.
Well, lifestyle is important. People want to live here. Maybe, people will come here. So that's great.
I know we have quite a few successful entrepreneurs that choose specifically the Okanagan to come to because of that factor. You can do business and still have a great lifestyle.
Absolutely. Where else do you want to raise your family?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, one more, and then I think we're done for today. So are there any emerging industries tech companies should keep an eye out on? And I'd heard power because of AI. I don't know. That's just an answer that GPT or whatever gave me when I said, what is it? And they said, and I thought, that's very interesting because you're trying to preserve your own life, artificial intelligence.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Help solve that one.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that was a big discussion actually at Web Summit was power and how we're going to grow with that here in our province. But I think specifically here in the Okanagan, something that I'm really excited about right now is fostering the agri-tech industry in our region. So agriculture, as you know, is the backbone of the Okanagan for many years. We have lots of farmers, producers, growers here. But I really think we have the opportunity to carve out agri-tech as a industry here for us to be recognized globally. We have very unique farming compared to the rest of Canada with a lot of orchards and vineyards versus the large-scale grain farming you see in Saskatchewan. And so I think there's a great opportunity for Kelowna and the Okanagan to become a great test bed for people who are innovating and building in agri-tech space to come here, test their products, and work with our local producers.
I'm aware of that Summerland Research Station.
Yes.
Do you guys work with that, or is that kind of a standalone thing?
Yeah, we're just actually starting to really foster that relationship. It's been a long time asset here in the South Okanagan, and I think we're wanting to bring it back into how can the tech community help to grow the research that they're doing there. One group that we've been partnered with for a few years is called the BC BTAC Center in Penticton with Okanagan College. It's the BC Beverage and Access Technology Center. And so they do all of the testing on beverages, alcoholic, non-alcoholic, to make sure all the levels are right. But it's a huge asset for producers who are creating that to be able to have those testing facilities here in the Okanagan. And so starting to leverage a lot of the organizations that already exist, but maybe aren't embracing technology that's readily available. So how can we help to play that conduit into to those farmers and producers too for tech adoption?
Okay, last chance to say something. Do you need to? Do you want to do a pitch or anything? You think we've covered it all?
I think we covered
Everybody
it all.
with an idea, just go down and grab coffee.
Yeah.
And
I would just say thank you guys for your support. Really, it only works if we have individuals and service providers like you guys coming in to share your expertise. So appreciate you for showing up and continuing to show up to our events in our community. Yeah.
Thanks, Brea, Russell, for coming out, and we'll see you next time.